Good Thursday evening, everybody, and welcome in to the latest episode of the Lions Grid. This is episode number 7 of our 7th season, and I am joined tonight by Joseph Wilmot and Jeffrey Raymond. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing this evening?
Doing great. Happy to be on the show for another edition of the Lions Grid.
Fantastic. It is game night, and I am ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, and of course, usually on Thursday nights here, we have the Lions Grid, but this particular Thursday night, of course, we are treated with a Week 4 matchup between our Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. That game will be played over on Amazon Prime, but thankfully, for those of us here in Michigan and the Wisconsin area, if you are interested in seeing the game and do not have access to Amazon Prime, the game will be on Fox as well in the local market. So you can tune into that, and kickoff is around 8:15 there. So we'll try and fly through the show. We have a packed show, but we know that we're definitely competing with the kickoff there. So taking a look here, getting started as we tend to do here nowadays. We're going to go ahead real quick, and we're going to go ahead and grind the grid as we take a look at what happened this previous week in the NFL and catch you up on all the latest happenings. So without any further ado, we'll go ahead. We'll toss up the screen here, and we'll get at it. So starting off last week, we had the matchup on Thursday Night Football. 49ers easily win that game 30-12 over the Giants. Last week, the Lions got their second win of the season, winning 20-6 against the Falcons at home at Ford Field. In a game of teams still looking for their first wins, the Chargers are the first ones to add a win column there, beating the Vikings 28-24. The Vikings suffered from turnovers in that game and fall to 0-3 on the season. A close game between the Packers and the Saints. The Packers were able to come back in this game and get their win, improving to 2-1. 18-17 was the final score there. And a little bit of a surprise, the Jacksonville Jaguars lose a game at home to the Texans, 37-17. What was probably one of the most epic beatdowns in NFL history, the Dolphins at home putting up a 70 buffet against the Broncos. 70-20 was the final score there. Something straight out of Madden. The Titans went into Cleveland and were unable to come out victorious. The Browns defending their home field there, 27-3. The Bills went into Washington and beat them down 37-3, a game that might have put the Washington Commanders head coach on the hot seat despite a 2-0 start to begin the season. Another surprising outcome from the week, the Colts beating the Ravens at home 22-19. In what is not a surprise, the Patriots beat the Jets. The Patriots, I want to say, have beat the Jets in I think it goes back all the way to like 2009 now that they've beaten.
I believe it's 15 in a row.
Yeah, 15 consecutive games. So not too surprising there, a 15-10 win. The Panthers are still looking for their first win on the season as they went to Seattle and lost that game 37-27. Taylor Swift in attendance for this game, but 41-10 the outcome there as the Chiefs smoke the Bears. What may be the biggest upset of the season, depending on how things play out, and we'll talk about it later. The Cardinals, 28-16 over them Cowboys. The Steelers getting a win on Sunday night against the Raiders, 23-18. And then one of our two Monday Night Football games, we had a battle of the undefeated, but the Eagles coming out and on top 25-11 over the Buccaneers. And then we had a matchup between the Bengals and the Rams. The Bengals get the win at home, 19-16 over the Los Angeles Rams. So that is what happened around the league this week. Some big storylines there. And now what we'll go ahead and do is we'll hop into our buy or sell segment, gentlemen. We'll take a look at some of the trending topics across the NFL and get your guys' take on them, whether or not you're buying or selling these ideas. So let's take a look here real quick at chat. We got Edward Wallace here who's in talking about the Kool-Aid. Edward, thanks for joining us again as always, and we'll get the new comments will be showing up here over in the display. So if you're watching along and you want to contribute to the show, go ahead and type your comments in and we'll hopefully see them on the screen. But moving into our first buy or sell question, gentlemen, the question is, does Miami have the best offense in the NFL, or does Denver have the worst defense? Which one of these are you buying and which one are you selling, whether it be Miami's offense being the best or Denver being the worst defense. Joe, let's kick it over to you.
Yeah, you see here, they had a running back that I think scored almost 5 touchdowns, if not 5 touchdowns on offense, or 4 or 3 touchdowns, something like that. Abnormous is the word I'm looking for. Abnormous amount of touchdowns. And I was going to pick him up in fantasy football, but Kevin beat me to the waiver wire because he was probably one rank behind me and was able to pick up the running back for Miami. But Tua Tagovailoa played an exceptional game as well. So does Miami have the best offense in the NFL? Yes, I'm buying that. Or does Denver have the worst defense? Yes, I'm buying that as well.
Buying both of them. Nice.
I'm buying both of them. This is 2 buys for me.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here?
I'm also going with the double buy. Miami, they have the best offensive scheming. Mike McDaniel's fingerprints are all over this offense. He comes from the Shanahan tree. Open receivers, not just this game, which way that they were wide open this game, but basically the whole entire season so far. He is scheming people wide open. Tua is built perfectly for this offense because he's got one of the quickest releases and anticipation in the league. They are a juggernaut as far as offense and productivity.
Yeah, anytime you drop I know there's the 50 burger is the phrase everyone likes to use. So I've come up with the 70 buffet, trying to think of a more fitting word for what happens when you score 70 points, because everybody was eating in that game. Even the backup quarterback, Mike White, came in and had himself a day, throwing a touchdown to the artist formerly known as Robbie Anderson, now going by Robbie Chosen. It was not a good look for the Broncos. Made the Dolphins look really good, and I know there was that one replay where they showed it was on the rookie running back A-Chain's run. They had shown there were like 7 defenders for the Denver Broncos on the ground. 7 of the 11 guys on the field just laying down on the ground in one play. That's not good. That's not good defense. That's how you lose games. So I think I'm going to join you two and be in the double buy, because Miami is good, Denver is bad. Taking a look at our next question here. Of the rookie quarterbacks this year, CJ Stroud might be out to the strongest start. Are you buying or selling that he will be the best rookie quarterback in this class? Jeffrey, let's start with you on this one.
I'm actually going to sell this one. I think he and Anthony Richardson are going to be vying for the top honors. I think Bryce Young is going to die behind that offensive line. I mean, he's already been injured, and the Carolina Panthers are not looking good. I think he's going to struggle, unfortunately, behind that line. But it seems like CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson are doing really well, and I think it's going to be between those two. So I'm going to sell for now because I want to see more of the season play out between them.
Very good. Joe, what are your thoughts here?
I'm going to buy this just because he's got 3 complete starts, and he hasn't been injured throughout any of the games this season. So he's got more of a history of staying healthy. And when you evaluate players, you should evaluate their injury proneness, like how often they get injured, and add that to how good the player is. I mean, your dad said you can't control injuries, but on the same token, you're more reliable of a player, and you make more of an impact as a player when you don't get injured.
Yeah, certainly availability is a important factor. It is, I think part of the reason why the Lions this offseason decided to let DeAndre Swift go, because as good of a player as he has been for the Lions, he hasn't been able to suit up in a lot of the games. So it certainly is something they take into consideration. I am also going to be with you, Joe, here. I am going to buy, just because my only concern with Richardson is the fact that he's already had that concussion, and that has cost him to sit out. Obviously, injuries can change that. If CJ Stroud gets hurt, it's a matter of who can stay healthy is really going to, I think, dictate who ends up being the best rookie quarterback in this class. But right now, being optimistic, thinking that CJ Stroud is going to be out there for the rest of the games of the season. He seems to be settling in well. He's got some nice chemistry with their rookie wide receiver, Tank Dell. He's also finding Nico Collins. And the Texans surprisingly don't look as bad as I think everyone thought they were going to be. They actually look like a team that may be a dark horse down there in the AFC South, especially since the fact they went into Jacksonville and got a win there. Speaking of Jacksonville, gentlemen, this next question, the Jaguars were supposed to be the Lions of the AFC. They were supposed to be that pick. Of course, last year they did make it to the playoffs and got knocked out by the Chiefs. But everyone was talking about Trevor Lawrence potentially being an MVP candidate, about them being ready to sort of take that next step. Are you buying or selling the idea that maybe that was a little too soon? Maybe we were a little early in trying to anoint them as being the next team in the AFC. Joe, what are your thoughts about the Jaguars and whether or not are they not the team we thought they were?
They are not the team that we thought they were, or as the press thought they were. I never really thought they'd be much of a contender for AFC Championship or even getting to that game. At best, I think they're a wild card team. But even this season, it's like, will they even make that? Jacksonville has generally not been that good of a franchise and hasn't made a lot of splash in the playoffs in its history. So, it's just a tough history to overcome. Even the Lions, who have a poor history in the Super Bowl era, have championships that they've won. So, I mean, they got to change the culture there, and that only happens by winning a Super Bowl or an AFC championship in modern day NFL. So yeah, this is a buy for me. They are not ready to push for the AFC championship.
Yeah, but it looks like Edward's in the same boat as you there. Of course, you can only judge a team based off of what they've given us, and so far, as he points out, they're not off to a great start. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
I'm also buying this. It just hasn't been coming together for them. Calvin Ridley, their big pickup in the offseason, he was suspended all of last year, so it was his first season of action back in the NFL in a couple of years. And outside of a breakout first game, he has had some drop issues, and he's been having a bunch of issues just kind of being productive. Trevor Lawrence actually has been playing okay despite all of the things. But yeah, it just hasn't been coming together in all the units there. But so I'm definitely buying.
Yeah, I am buying as well. But certainly, I think you touched on an important caveat there, Jeff, that it just doesn't feel like they're firing on all cylinders. But they could, if they get things figured out. Again, being in a weaker division, definitely make the playoffs. And as long as you make the playoffs, you have a chance to go on a run, as the New York Giants have proven as they've won 2 Super Bowls.
Yes.
So as long as you get in the dance, you have a chance. So we'll see what happens as we advance throughout the year. Speaking about playoffs and staying in the AFC, a name familiar to Lions fans. He's a much better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach. Jim Schwartz and the Cleveland defense will lead the Browns to the playoffs this season. Are you buying or selling this idea? Jeffrey, let's start with you.
I am going to buy this. I think the defense is the strength of their team. Their offense has been pretty average to below average as far as productivity goes. Deshaun Watson has not kind of put it together. Lost to Nick Chubb, obviously, but the defense is the strength of that team. And I'm a Jim Schwartz fan. I know those teams were undisciplined as all heck, but they were kind of fun. And he's got this defense playing feisty like we were. So I'm buying this.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to buy this as well. If my philosophy is, if Cleveland makes it to the playoffs, Detroit better be there as well.
There's that old adage that defense wins championships. So in order to win a championship, you need to make the playoffs. So I'll buy as well here. I certainly think Jim Schwartz is certainly one of the cases of those coaches that is a much better coordinator than a head coach. He definitely, that's where he shines. And right now he and that Cleveland defense is shining pretty good. So I'm going to buy as well. And it looks like Edward is cringing a little bit about having to pay that money, but he is going to buy with us as well. So
this is becoming an expensive episode.
we're just spending money like we're printing it. Now we're going to take a look at one of the outcomes from this past week. I mentioned it earlier. We teased it a little bit, but the Cardinals beating the Cowboys will go down as being the upset of the year. The Cardinals, of course, came into that game 0-2. The Cowboys came into that game 2-0 and looked like one of the best defenses in the league. They did have an injury with Trayvon Diggs getting hurt in practice, but the Cardinals getting that victory 28-16 was a bit of a surprise. Joe, are you buying or selling it being the potential upset of the year?
Sell. It's not the upset of the year. There's going to be bigger games. There's going to be a bigger underdog and a more powerhouse of a football team. Granted, Cowboys are a powerhouse of a football team, and Dobbs isn't really a quarterback that you'd expect to come in and play well against the defense of Dallas that's been pretty good the first couple of games of the season. And it's an upset. It's a big upset, but I'm going to sell this. It's not the upset of the year.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts?
I'm selling that too. I agree with Joe. There's going to be more important games where an upset is going to be more, I guess, more powerful or more upsetty, if you were to put an adjective to it. Some upsetty spaghetti teams out there. But yeah, I think later on in the season, like we could see some of these 1 or 2 win teams like sneaking one into like a playoff hopeful, and I think I'm going to sell that and wait.
I appreciate that take, and I enjoy it, or I definitely respect it. I think I'm going to buy it because I'm going to look at this. I mean, it's sort of down to the person, right? About what is the best or biggest upset, like how do you quantify that? There's not really a good way of doing it, but just the fact that I think, coming into this game, the Cowboys were looking like they were going to, as one of the elite teams in the NFC, having potentially the best player in the NFL in Micah Parsons with the rate he was on early this season. I think it was a pretty big thing for the Cardinals to get the win. Obviously the outcome to both of your gentlemen's points later on, there may be upsets down the road that have more of an impact on the sort of outcome of the season and the playoff race. But just in terms of having one team that looked to be surging compared to one team that even the Giants were able to beat, the Giants even came back in the second half to do it. It just two teams going in opposite directions. And the fact that the Cardinals not only came out and beat them, but beat them by a decent margin to me it's really surprising. I don't know if they just phoned it in and the Cowboys just, left their mindset, their killer mentality on the plane, but that's an ugly one that, I doubt the Cardinals are going to be in the playoff race, so having the head-to-head win against them isn't probably not going to mean a lot. But depending on how tight this playoff race gets, it could be a game that the Cowboys miss. Taking a look here, thanks Drew Dodds for joining in, and of course, go Lions as we take on the Packers. Taking a look now at the New York Jets. We were sort of talking and joking about this in our little pregame that we do in the studio before we go live here, gentlemen. But are you buying or selling the fact that it is time for the Jets to stop pretending that Zach Wilson gives them the best chance to win? There's been a lot of chatter out there lately. I saw reports on ESPN about the locker room being upset and calling Robert Saleh a Wilson apologist and the team being ready to explode. And there's lots of people saying they should trade for Kirk Cousins, that they should look at other options. Colin Kaepernick wrote a letter to the New York Jets owner saying that he would love the honor to come be their practice quarterback. So it's the talk of the town, the QB situation with the Jets. Are you buying or selling the fact that it's time to move on from Zach Wilson? Jeff, let's start with you.
I am buying this. I'm buying this twice, 3 times, 4 times maybe. You saw the 1,000-yard stare on Saleh's face when Aaron Rodgers went down. I mean, they self-scouted, and the backup quarterback they chose, their QB2, was Zach Wilson. So if Aaron Rodgers ever went down, he would be the backup quarterback. Unfortunately, it happened 4 plays into the season. But this guy doesn't look ready. He doesn't look like the way Hard Knocks kind of made it out, that he made a bunch of progress this summer. I know he's been thrust into a situation, but if Aaron Rodgers went down, would you choose this guy as your QB2 for 2 starts? say he had like an ankle injury or something, would you trust this guy to get you 2 starts? I don't think I would. And I think they need to be honest with themselves.
Joe, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think Zach Wilson, after having this time to showcase his talents or lack thereof based upon his performance, is on his way out of the NFL. He was drafted high, thought he had a lot of potential, and he didn't have a successful first few seasons. And now being a backup quarterback and having to come in, if he can't be a backup quarterback that's successful behind Aaron Rodgers or behind anybody that can give a team a chance to win, they're gonna have to get rid of him for. I mean, as of right now, he's their best chance to win. Yes, but down the line, if anything happens with a trade, I can see him being third string now, and then being out of the league in a few years. So they need to stop pretending Zach Wilson gives them a chance to win. That's a buy.
Yeah, I'm in the buy boat here too. And I think one of the things that was most interesting for me, I saw during ESPN earlier today, they had a graphic up that showed his career stats versus Jamarcus Russell's stats, who of course was the infamous Raiders pick, who ended up leaving the league very early on, and their numbers are almost identical through the same stretch of games. So to your point, Joe, I think he is very close to playing himself out of a position here in the NFL. Edward brings up a good point that there's not really a whole lot of great options to replace him with. I know they just signed Trevor Siemian as a free agent, but I think there aren't a lot of easily available players. Obviously, Zach Wilson might know the offense the best, and there aren't necessarily a lot of great options out on the free agency market. But Joe, as you pointed out, if you really are in a win now mode like the Jets seem to be, because they have a great defense, they have a lot of young players that have the are on their rookie contracts. So the timing feels right. They have a surplus of 4th-round picks, and I know they have some other draft capital. It might be time to open up the war chest and go get a new QB because, so far Zach Wilson has shown that he doesn't have the goods to get it done. Now taking a little more of a Lions-centric approach here, gentlemen. Speaking of rookies and draft picks, really one from this weekend here. Are you buying or selling the fact that the Lions wouldn't have beaten the Falcons without their rookies? What are your thoughts there, Joe? We'll kick it to you about your thoughts about the rookie performance for the Lions against the Falcons.
As much as I think the Lions have a good team last year, they have an even better team this year. But would they have beaten the Falcons without their rookies? No, their rookies made all the plays in the game. We saw a few plays by some other people like Goff and Anzalone, but ultimately it was the rookies that were big impactful, and Hutchinson was impactful. But, I mean, you take away these rookies, it's a lot more competitive of a game. They wouldn't have beat Atlanta without their rookies. I don't know if I can buy this one, but just because I'm on the hype train about the rookies, I'm going to buy it.
I like it. Jeff, what are your thoughts here?
I'm also going to buy, our GM, he took this draft strategy here, and it seemed like he wanted to get a bunch of players who are ready to play right now. And I think we're seeing that here. I know we went against a lot of like the national picks, the national media picks, as far as like projections on who we're going to draft. They've all stepped up. Jahmyr Gibbs was supposed to be brought in like slowly behind Montgomery. Montgomery went down, and he has, rose up to the occasion. And I don't think we would have won without them.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I will buy, but I will, as we go into our next question here, I will say specifically, I do feel it is the second rounders that have really been the ones that have contributed, that being Brian Branch and Sam Laporta. Those two have had really huge impacts. You talked a little bit there, Jeff, about Gibbs and sort of them wanting to bring him on slowly. And then we really haven't seen a whole lot of Jack Campbell. Would love to see him on the field more because I do think he can contribute. He just hasn't had the opportunity yet. But I'll buy here as well. And as mentioned, the final question here in our buy or sell segment is Detroit's second rounders are outplaying the first rounders. So the second round picks have contributed more so far in the early part of the season than the first rounders. As you might guess, I am buying this one. There, as I've mentioned, I think Sam Laporta and Brian Branch have really been the two rookies that have stood out to me so far. And if they continue to play at the level they're playing at, they're going to be. I mean, they're instantly impact players for the Lions, which has been fantastic. I still think Jack Campbell and Gibbs can get to that point as well this season, where they're down, later in the season where they're key members of the team. But it just the fact that Laporta and Branch are already at that level to me is why I'm buying this one. But Jeff, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I am buying this one. Branch has been to me the steal of the draft here. Laporta has been a good replacement in that he can block and run routes deep, as we saw in the game last weekend. I think Hutchinson, when we traded him to Minnesota, Hawkinson. When we traded Hawkinson to Minnesota, to me, he seemed more like a wide receiver, and he wasn't able to kind of help downfield with the run blocking and all that kind of stuff. I think Laporta matches this much more, but I'm just going to go back to what I said about our GM Brad Holmes. I think he sought these players out. He got some steals here, and yeah, we're deep as far as our bench.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see an Iowa tight end actually live up to the hype in the Lions uniform. Joe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, you just take into account the touchdowns. Laporta's got a touchdown. Brian Branch has got a touchdown. 2 touchdowns. And for Jack Campbell, he's just got a few tackles and maybe has a sack. But then you take a look at Gibbs, and he's had, fairly decent start to the season. But what you can expect from a first-year running back. The coaches are saying that he's playing good, but there's still more yards to be gained that he could get. So, I think that the second rounders are the hype, and I think that they are all playing the first rounders. This is a buy.
Yeah, and I see Edward there saying this being a tough one for him, and he's going to sell. I can see there too, and I would also say about the idea of them outplaying. Certainly, I think there was more of an opportunity right out the gate at the safety and tight end position. So that certainly has helped Laporta and Branch be able to contribute because those were areas of weakness on the roster. Whereas, having David Montgomery, the running back room was pretty solid. And of course, our linebackers aren't the best in the NFL, but I think the Lions and Dan Campbell certainly feel pretty confident in that room and the players they have there. So there hasn't been a whole lot of opportunity in the young season for both of the first rounders, but hopefully as the year goes on, they can certainly prove their worth as well. Because right now, as we talked about, I think we're all in agreement that Laporta and Branch have really started off the season hot. Showing off, speaking of hot, we have a new segment to the series. We have our hot butts, and we're taking a look at which NFL coaches are on the hot seat around the league. We'll go ahead and we'll throw it up here and we'll run through. We'll just run through the names first, and then we'll get some thoughts from you gentlemen about which coaches have the hottest butts of the group we're taking a look at. So taking a look here, tossing it up on the screen. Starting off with Matt Eberflus, the head coach for the Chicago Bears, who are currently sitting at 0-3. He is our first candidate. Next up, we have another NFC North head coach, Kevin O'Connell, who is also 0-3. Taking a look against the team that got a victory against the Vikings last week, but still in a lot of hot water. Brandon Staley, they're 1-2 with the LA Chargers. Staying in the AFC West, we have Josh McDaniels sitting here at 1-2. We talked about them a little bit earlier, but the Carolina Panthers and Frank Reich, they're 0-3. We also mentioned the loss to the Bills put Ron Riverboat Rivera, as they like to say on ESPN, dropped him down to 2-1. Probably he obviously has the most wins of any of the coaches on here. And then last but not least, our only defensive coordinator on the list, one Mr. Vance Joseph, the Denver defensive coordinator, who interestingly enough was also their head coach at one point in time before he was fired and then brought back as part of Sean Payton's staff. So gentlemen, of those names I mentioned, Who do you think has the hottest? Who is in the most precarious situation? Who has the hottest butt here? Joe, let's throw it over to you. Who you think is the coach in the most danger of losing their job?
Well, of course, obviously Vance Joseph, but
Mhm.
the thing is that the Carolina Panthers head coach as well, being 0-3 on the season, being a little bit competitive in some football games, but starting a new regime with Bryce Young. I think that you take a look at this year as okay, go out there, play the games, get experience. But if they have a bad season like they are having, I can see them getting rid of a coaching staff and just starting a whole new regime, and really trying to rebuild that franchise because right now it's just like a city that is seen it's been worn out. Like they haven't gone through and tried to rebuild that franchise since their Cam Newton days. So I mean, they got a rookie quarterback, high potential. I think they want to see him play this season, but I can see the head coach of the Carolina Panthers being fired soon.
Jeffrey, what are your thoughts here? Who has the hottest butt? Oh, Jeffrey, are you on mute there?
Oh, sorry about that. Obviously, Vance Joseph, he got a 70 burger dropped on him. It was probably going to be a scapegoat as far as Sean Payton in the offseason. Maybe not even the offseason. He's going to get fired maybe during the season, depending on how the rest of the games go. But as far as that, who I think has the hottest butts is tied between Matt Eberflus of the Chicago Bears and Josh McDaniels of the Las Vegas Raiders. As far as the Raiders, Devontae's grumpy. He went on the media and said that he doesn't have time to be waiting around for the offense to figure itself out. We've seen a lot of poor clock management out of them, just bad coaching decisions. Going for a field goal when you're down 8 in the red zone. Then you get a penalty to get closer and you still get the field goal. Come on now. And Mark Davis, the owner, has been kind of unpredictable in these past few years. So I think he's got one of the hottest butts. And the Bears have been an absolute dumpster fire this entire year. So I think they could clean house pretty quick here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of worthy candidates, and we'll have to keep our finger on the pulse as we move through the rest of the season. But I think right now, looking at everybody on there, Matt Eberflus is my number one pick, just because I think he's at the hottest Scoville units. Because I think of everybody, he is like the most sure thing I think to get fired of the head coaches. I really don't see any situation in which the Bears are going to be able to turn this around because of what we've seen on the field as a product here through 3 weeks. So I don't see them being able to, like, at least with the Vikings, last year they got off to that great start and they were winning these close games that they're losing this year, but the games are close. So in theory, if a couple things go their way, they take a little bit better carry of the ball, they could maybe turn some of those losses into wins in the future, which would help them out. But there's nothing redeeming about what we're seeing out of the Bears. So I think they are certainly, I think he is the most likely to be fired. And unfortunately, it's also impacting Justin Fields' career as well. So it's a bad situation there in Chicago, and I think they're going to be the most likely to make a coaching change. So he has the Matt Eberflus is getting my hottest butt award because I don't see that fire dying down at anytime soon. Good thing we're talking about the NFC North because we're kicking it back to the king of the North segment. We'll do just a quick recap here because as part of the game day storylines, we're of course having an NFC North battle between the Lions and the Packers this evening. So that's a big part of the game tonight. But just to update everybody on the current situation, of course, the Packers are still leading. They are currently sitting on the throne. They are 2-1. They're 1-0 in the NFC North. The Lions are right behind him in second place. This is our first NFC North game. And as we will discuss, it is a big one for the future. And then, of course, as mentioned, there are 2 0-3 teams below us. So right now, gentlemen, it looks like the NFC North is a 2-team race. And we'll talk about it here when we talk about the upcoming game. But tonight's game, spicy for the early race here for the NFC North throne. All right. Before we talk about tonight's game, though, let's talk about some highlights from last week's game and what they could mean here as we move into the game. So we'll go ahead and give you our previous week recap and thoughts here. Gentlemen, we talked about it last week about how it was important for the Lions to respond here after losing to Seattle like they did in overtime. It was an opportunity for them to bounce back after a tough loss, and they did it. They came through for us, 20-6 there. Jeffrey, of course, you were in attendance of the game down there at Ford Field. How was that? Did you enjoy yourself?
Yes, the crowd was raucous. Reminded me of us going to home games at Michigan State. Everybody was into it. We were riled up during the coin toss. It was awesome.
And it was great to see, because not only was obviously we were coming off a tough loss to Seattle, but we also played that game without 6 of our starters: Taylor Decker, Emmanuel Mosley, Kirby Joseph, Vitae, David Montgomery, and CJ Gardner-Johnson all did not play in that game. So the fact that the Lions were able to overcome that and get a victory, were you gentlemen impressed by that ability for them to go next man up and get a win against a team in the Falcons that I think is surprising a lot of people with how well they've played so far in the early season? Joe, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Detroit came out in that game and they took a commanding lead, right out of the gates. But it wasn't easily won at the beginning of the game, because Atlanta did show a lot of fight in them, and they did show that they were going to play us, verse for verse. Like, okay, we score a touchdown, they get a field goal, they move down the field, we stop them, then we get the ball back, they stop us. The first quarter was really back and forth, and you didn't know how the game was going to go. Second quarter gets in going, and Detroit starts to take over a little bit more dominance in the football game. And then by the time the third quarter was there, we see the defense come out and shut them down effectively. They were saying, they haven't scored a touchdown this quarter, and they were really effective. And you just watch the third quarter, and you're seeing how many yards have they held them to throughout the course of the game so far. And then the fourth quarter comes, and Detroit just closes out with a dominant performance. So it was really like getting a locomotive, like a train. You start the train, it's going
building that momentum,
and it just gets going. And it's like the Lions were a full steam at the end of that game, closing it out and getting a dominant victory. So, I mean, you'd think Atlanta, being having a decent record going into that game, would have played better, but it's okay. I'm happy the Lions won. After that loss of Seattle, I didn't think Detroit was really – I thought they kind of had a letdown in that game, they just weren't into it. They had a letdown from being on public TV, national television on NBC. Then they go back home, and it's like, you got your crowd behind you. Aren't you happy? Aren't you excited? And they just kind of didn't play a exciting football game. And then they come out here against Atlanta, and they play a good football game. So, yeah, Detroit is on the rise, and now it's a nationally televised game. You wonder, what are they going to be able to do tonight? If they win, then they take a commanding lead in the division, and really they'll be favorited from here on out. So I'm looking forward to tonight's game, a big game tonight.
Absolutely. Jeff, what are your thoughts about last week's performance? Did you appreciate their gutty effort they put out there?
I did, and I absolutely agree with Joe when he described their second half dominance. They pretty much exerted their will despite having all those injuries. Some of it can be attributed to Desmond Ridder. Arthur Smith is letting him throw the ball a lot more than their first few games. Their first few games, couple games, they relied almost exclusively on the run game, kind of like what they did last year. But they've had to throw in these games, especially against us. And but yeah, I could definitely tell that we started to exert our will, and that just comes down to coaching and the personality and the kind of style that's been instilled by Dan Campbell. We looked pretty good.
Yeah, it was a good overall team win. I like the fact that, Jeffrey, to your point, The offense was able to perform well enough that we were able to get out to an early lead, and that took them out of their comfort zone, right? It forced them to throw the ball instead of, as mentioned, they have three really great running backs, and they would have much preferred to just ground and pound. But the fact that we were able to get out to a lead and force them to air the ball out certainly helped us out. And I was a big fan of what the defense did. We had 6 defenders combined for 7 sacks. We were talking about the fact that Aiden Hutchinson needed some help. And he got it. He had 5 other players help him get sacks, and of course, Aiden Hutchinson himself showed up with 2 sacks. He had the one was he forced a fumble and recovered it in the fourth quarter. And then Brian Branch too. We talked about him already being a big contributor for a second-round pick. A team high 11 tackles, including 3 tackles for a loss and breaking up 2 passes. Big shout out to the defense there, because they played really, really well. So if they can continue to perform at that level, it'll be huge. And I really like that the Lions did a great job of limiting Bijan. There was no watching Bijan run, because he only got 33 yards on 10 carries and had 60 total yards from scrimmage, which were both season lows. So it was great to see the defense come out there and really find a way to get pressure on the quarterback. And then we took away, one of their biggest weapons. So love that. Of course, where there's good news, there's also bad news. We continued to see some injuries along that offensive line front. Both Matt Nelson and Dan Skipper did leave that game early. So we continue to see our offensive line get beat up. Now it's not only the starters, but now we're starting to see some attrition with the backup guys. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on. Hopefully,
I honestly think that's why we only scored 20 points. I believe if we kind of held the line a little bit as far as our health was concerned, I feel like we could have scored a little bit more.
Yeah, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. I know we're starting to see some players get healthy. Taylor Decker's supposed to be playing tonight. We've missed him the last 2 games, so we'll see. Hopefully, we can stay healthy, get healthy, and because that offensive line certainly is going to be key to our success. So to put a nice bow on our thoughts for the last week, we'll go ahead and do our champ and chump selection here. My champ is going to be the defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. Like I said, we wanted to see some help for Aiden Hutchinson, and the way he schemed that defense last week, he got him help. We got to see pass rush. We got to see him take away Bijan. He's my champ because I'm just a big fan of what we saw out of the defense. And then my chump is kind of a push, because I really liked what I saw from the Lions in general. So I'm picking the NFL just because, we had injuries in this Thursday night football business, the short turnaround for teams. Now every team has to deal with it. I just don't like it in general that there's just such few days when you play on Sunday and when you have to play on Thursday again. If you have somebody that gets hurt in the Sunday game, it's very unlikely that they're going to be able to rehab and be ready to play in that next game when they fall on Thursday nights. So just in general, I don't need football every night of the week. So I as much as I love being able to turn on the TV and see Thursday night football, and I'm going to love watching it tonight because it's a great game between the Packers and the Lions. I don't need it. So my chump is the NFL, because I would love the teams to have the proper amount of time so players can be healthy and be out there on the field. I like Edward's pick there, with the champ being the Lions D and the chump being the Denver Broncos. That's a good pick. Jeffrey, who do you got?
I am Edward, and I we got together and we absolutely agreed on this. Champ Lions D, we stepped up despite all the injuries, and we absolutely dominated that game. Chump, I'm going to go more specifically with Sean Payton. When he was newly hired here, like a couple months in, he had mocked Nathaniel Hackett on having one of the worst coaching jobs in the NFL history. He's 0-3, and he got a 70 burger dropped on him.
Yeah,
chump of the week.
It doesn't taste so good when you're the one in the kitchen eating what Russ is cooking. Joe, what are your thoughts here? Who's your champ and chump?
Champ is Aiden Hutchinson, Defensive Player of the Week in the NFC. So he's the champ. And then my chump is the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, just not getting the job done. His name is Roddick or Riddick or something.
Desmond Ridder.
Ritter, yeah. So Desmond Ritter just held on to the ball too long. He didn't throw the ball away. He didn't read the defense. Just Desmond Ridder made too many bad plays. Did not keep him in the game. Did not keep him competitive. Was not accurate, so he's the chump.
Gotcha. Well, if they haven't kicked off yet, the game is about to kick off because we're at 8:17, gentlemen. I will briefly cover some of the game day storylines here. But before we do that, just so we can lock it in before any scoring happens, gentlemen, who is your pick for tonight? We're all coming into this game at 2-1. We've picked the Lions in all three of the games so far. Spoiler alert, I'm picking the Lions again here tonight to get a win in Lambeau. So I'm going to lock in the Lions. Jeffrey, Joe, who do you got?
Locking in the Lions, baby. Drinking that Kool-Aid. We're going to go out, get the win, just like we ended Aaron Rodgers' season last year. We're going to go in there and take it again.
Joe?
If you're a Lions fan and you're rooting for them this season and you want them to win in a big game like this, you have no choice but to take the Lions. I'm locking in the Lions.
Oh, yeah.
Drinking that Kool-Aid another week, and we'll see here if we're rewarded with another win in the column. I'm hoping we are. But let's talk about some of the things that are going to be important for the Lions to get that win, gentlemen. Let's start with the injuries. As mentioned, we still have some players out. Both Matt Nelson and Vitae, they're definitely out. Emmanuel Mosley was listed as questionable, but he's out of this game. There are two unknowns as far as whether or not they'll be playing or not for questionables. Kirby Joseph is going to be a game-time decision. Jonah Jackson is also a game-time decision. But we should be seeing both Taylor Decker and David Montgomery returning to the field today. Hard to say, what sort of snap count they're going to be on or anything like that. But they should be, at least they were questionable, but they have been declared as playing in today's game. And then on the other side of things for the Packers, they also have been hit by the injury bug. David Bakhtiara, their Pro Bowl left tackle, he's out. He's been placed on IR. They're starting right guard. Ellington Jenkins is out. Their starting linebacker, Devondre Campbell, is out. Jair Alexander, their Pro Bowl cornerback, is questionable, and he is also a game-time decision. But last I heard, he was trending towards being out. But some good news for the Packers. They do get back Aaron Jones and Christian Watson. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there because the Packers' passing attack has been one of their strong suits so far. Jordan Love has been coming out and airing out the ball, and he has been without his number one wide receiver in Christian Watson. So he'll be making his return to the field for the Packers. But gentlemen, we sort of talked about it a little bit there with the Kings of the North. This is an important game for both the Packers and the Lions. Whoever wins this game will have the first head-to-head victory, and they will also be sitting on the throne in the NFC North. They will be in first place, and they will be our King of the North. So this is a important game for both teams. The ability to go 3-1 through the first quarter of the season is huge and sets them up for a real strong push and just a great start to the season. And for the Lions in particular, if they beat the Packers tonight and go to 3-1, it's not any team can beat any team. That's why they play the games. But next week, the following week, they have the Carolina Panthers. So a great opportunity if they get a win against the Packers to go to 4-1 as they go play the winless Panthers. What are your guys' thoughts here? What do you think the Lions need to do, need to execute on to be successful in this game against the Packers? Obviously, the good news is while the Lions do struggle at Lambeau Field, we're not playing them in the dead of winter. It is September, so it's not the frozen tundra. What do you think the Lions need to do here tonight to be successful in this game on Thursday night? Joe, let's start with you here.
They need to play defense. They need to have their defense keep them in the game early on in case Green Bay comes out and they are electric. Another thing is that instead of field goals, they need to get touchdowns. They need to get at least 3 touchdowns in the football game, and they need their defense to play like it played against Atlanta, like it played against Kansas City. Not giving up so many points like against Seattle. If they can get their defense in tune with playing good football, and I think they have a good opportunity because sometimes that Jordan Love is just not the best quarterback that could play at that position. So my hope is that they rattle them, they they do the same thing to Jordan Love as they would do to Desmond Ridder, and keep this young quarterback, unsuccessful in the pocket, get some sacks on him, play defense, and put up some points. If they can put up at least 3 scores and a few field goals. I don't like the field goals in this game because last week the Saints tried to win a football game with a field goal against Green Bay, and it didn't happen. So I wouldn't be too confident in the kicking game for Detroit in this game.
Gotcha. Jeff, what are your thoughts here?
I think, we just need to build off of what we did best last week, and that was sound defense, being in the face of the quarterback, getting pressures on them, rattling Jordan Love, because Joe is right. He has been making some questionable decisions. He has been playing rather okay enough to get them to the record that they have, but he leads the league in uncatchable balls being thrown. I think some of his decision-making has kind of helped him not turn over the ball, at least. But if we can play the sound kind of defense that we had and be able to rotate some of our players trying to get back to speed from injury in there, I think we can come out with the win.
Yeah, I definitely think if the best version of the Lions comes out here tonight against the Packers, I think certainly it should be a win for the Lions, despite the historical trouble that they've had at Lambeau Field. It's a tough place to play. It's not just the Lions that have struggled at Lambeau, but I know they tend to be, whenever anybody talks about historical struggles at Lambeau, they tend to be the poster child for it. But I certainly think there's as long as we take care of the ball, like both of you gentlemen said, if we can force Jordan Love and the Packers offense into making mistakes, those are all the recipes for success. And to Joe's point, making the most out of opportunities. I think, that's one of the things about this particular Lions team that we've seen is that so far they're making really good use of all their opportunities. They're not cashing in on everything because obviously, they let that game against the Seahawks slide by. But more often than not, this Lions team is able to take advantage of opportunities, whether they be against, getting wins when they should be and things like that. So I expect them to continue that trend and come out here and it should be, I'm imagining, a pretty close game between the Packers, but I think they can definitely get a win here on the road in Lambeau, which again is just another sign that this Lions team is for real. And I think the really good news for the Lions is if they get this win against the Packers, it really sets them up to control their own fate. It's one of the reasons why this game is so important for both teams, because if you lose this game, to whoever loses this game, they're going to be in a position where they're sort of counting on the winner to have some sort of issues to help them get by them at some point in time, right? Whereas if you win this game, you sort of have your own destiny in your hands. You just continue to play your games. You continue to, operate the way you do, and you'll be able to make the playoffs with ease. You won't need someone to have a loss down the road or something like that. It's all up to you at that point in time and your ability to capitalize on opportunities. So you won't need luck. Won't be really a part of the equation. So looking for the Lions to do that and take that step forward and get a victory here tonight and really seize the moment and really, announced proudly to the world that they are the King of the North here in 2023. So, yep, the game definitely going on at this point. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up here for the Lions Grid tonight. Want to thank everybody for tuning in and participating. Edward in particular, always appreciate having you and having you interact with the show. And if you liked the show, make sure you do help our channel grow. We are coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. So whichever your streaming platform of choice is, make sure that you like our Lions Grid profile, and then you feel free to share our videos here. And we'll catch you next week. As mentioned, the Lions will be. I know they're playing the Panthers, but are they traveling? Are they home or away next week? They are. They are home, so we will be at Ford Field taking on the Carolina Panthers. So we'll be coming to you live next Thursday at 7:30. Hopefully breaking down a Detroit Lions win, and then also previewing that upcoming match against the Panthers. So, gentlemen, Jeffrey, Joe, thanks again for joining. Always appreciate having you on the show. All three of us locked in for a Lions victory, and hopefully will be improved to 3-1 in our pick'em with a right selection this evening. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Go Lions. And we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.